And it's counted as a curse because it's a sin to do that. And again, perhaps this is a minor example, but you can apply this in so many other ways or contexts to a much greater extent. I was always prone to this, still am to a degree, but this has tremendously lessened since doing the detoxing, both carnally but spiritually, as well. And I'm going to posit that when we take those actions, I know me doing things like that would always give me this kind of internal kick. It would satisfy this like need or craving. And, I hope brothers can see, based on some of the previous lessons, those emotions or feelings that are received, of course, those are chemical reactions that are produced in the body. Those emotions produced from those acts of wickedness yield chemicals that these parasites thrive and feed off of, which is why even the most minute amount of wickedness is detrimental on a carnal level to our health, because it is feeding these parasites within our bodies. And these parasites, although suppressed by our immune system, when we take actions like that, it enables them to start throwing off and repressing our own immune systems. However little that happens, it gradually happens. Many people, perhaps most, will never reach the point where it's just this full-blown wickedness and they're infested. But at the same time, this is how it happens. Of course, it starts very, very small. I'm speaking in the case of the elect. I hope this is all making sense. Strong alloids bring us migraine headaches and maybe our addictions as well, as they do bring our addictions in all forms, as well as the very beginning of all tumors. Right, that's what brain tumors are, is these cysts and egg sacs from these parasites, as we will see. Which problem they bring depends on where they colonize and what we, the host, are eating. Right. So, and these can be, once you're infested, again, that's what I'm positing are, what people know today as things like lupus or fibromyalgia or, other chronic systemic immune deficiencies, is the body is just saturated with parasites and their cysts and egg sacs. And these people are in tremendous pain because their immune systems are in the process of shutting down. It doesn't happen overnight because of the infestation of these parasites, which is ultimately it's a result of sin that occurred at some point in their lifetime or a previous one. And again, I hope brothers are familiar with that topic. I'm not going to go into and post scriptures on that right now. Reincarnation. The filaria are as thin as a single filament of silk, but very long, so they can make a tangle of themselves and trap other cells. Diofilaria is the common heartworm of dogs. It is a major contributor to all heart diseases. Since our lives are ended in heart disease more than any other way, heartworms should really have our greatest attention. This is for humans. So far, the synchrometer has found it not just in the heart, but everywhere we have fluids. And I believe I read somewhere that Hulda Clark said and said that when she tested people, everyone had parasites. They all had tapeworm eggs. I'm not familiar with this device. I don't totally know how it works. But again, you don't need this device. If you've sinned, which we all have, you have parasites infesting your body. And now at this point in the world, more than ever, because it's several lifetimes of sin that's been accumulated. And in a way, in a carnal sense, that sin is passed down from, it's passed down into the child through body fluids that are transferred from the mother to son. It's probably in the seed of the man as well, but I'd have to do more research into that. And as each generation you go through, you're going to be filled more and more essentially with parasites. Again, this is a carnal mechanism, and I hope I'm not going too fast. Until you reach a point where we are today, where you're overloaded with parasites and toxins, even from birth, and people are much smaller and they're much weaker than they were in the past. But again, you don't need a synchrometer to tell you that. Just think about it on a spiritual sense. Our eyes have even tiny threads of filaria suspended in the fluids. Right. So if you have floater in your eyes, that just means you have a much greater concentration of these parasites. I'm not going to say that every case, because again, you're always going to find exceptions, but things like snow blindness and other things. Snow blindness, and other conditions in your eyes. This is some food for thought. The chest, with its lymph fluids around the lungs, has heartworm bits. The belly, with its peritoneal fluid, has its short bits. If any of these short pieces of Diofilaria manage to escape both the immune system and your digestive enzymes so that it can grow long, it produces a snarl. Such a snarl is the starting point for Hodgkin's lymphoma, but non-Hodgkin's abdominal tumors. So it's just these fancy names for saying, describing a discomfort in the body, but what's going on underneath here are parasites out of control, growing in areas that they're not supposed to be, because for whatever reason the body was weak enough for a period of time that these parasites could take hold. Another reason to avoid stress in your life. But non-Hodgkin's abdominal tumor masses grow with Onychoxara. Again, all of these names, it's almost pointless, right? When you take this within a spiritual context. Onychoconosera, another filaria. Heartworms have gained ground in us by growing longer, even inside the bowel, so their clear glass-like threads make loops in the bowel contents easy to recognize. And in some cases they are when they're expelled, especially if they're expelled live, and in some cases there aren't. The body may have partially destroyed them, or destroyed them to the point where you can't even recognize them from anything else. Onchocerca has gained ground too. Its stages hide in our vein valves, giving us blue varicose veins. Interesting, I didn't know that. It gives us small hard nodules under our skin. Okay, here's another thing that I'm going to posit through the spirit. If you have like knots, you might go get a massage. People say you have knots in your muscles, or you might be, doing a lot of exercise, or an athlete where it's very taxing from your body and you have knots now in your tissues after that. You can press those knots out. I'm going to posit that when you're massaging or pressing those knots out, they say that it's just toxins. Well, through the spirit, I'm going to say that those are, could be a mass of toxins, but could be, I'm going to say, a mass of parasite eggs or cysts that the parasites have set up shop there. So kind of makes sense, right? If you're an athlete, or even just exercising in general, if you push yourself to the point of exhaustion, oftentimes you will get sick afterwards, which is an indication that your body was weakened to a point in which parasites could start, they could thrive under those conditions, and now your body has to go back and start fighting them, and get those symptoms and problems under control. Well, even if you don't get noticeably sick, the body is likely weakened to the point where they can start developing these cysts for whatever reason. I'm glossing over a large part of it, but I just want to get this information kind of out there. For animals, it is the availability of clean food and water that decides if they are heavily parasitized and short-lived. For humans, it is also the food and water that decides our health and whether we are heavily parasitized and destined to a life of low energy and lots of medicine. Right, brain fog, and now all of these toxins. Food and water decide if we will be heavily parasitized and other things, of course, as I've alluded to. For humans, unclean food and water has brought immunodepression, so parasites can increase. Right, as I mentioned before. Water has brought these critical immune system depressants, PCBs, so these come from plastic, benzene, same thing, asbestos, azo dyes, heavy metals, motor oil, and radioactive elements, and also things like pharmaceuticals. Generally, you can find these things in city tap water. Again, by design. Food has brought the same depressants, though through food processing that uses the same polluted water to accomplish all of this. Right. So if anything, it has more toxins because you get the water plus the food itself. As a result, humans now have 4 very common flukes besides fasciolopus, the sheep liver fluke, the lung fluke, the pancreatic fluke, and human liver fluke. Don't believe that the sheep liver fluke is for sheep alone. Hosts can be substituted when immunity is down so that we become the accidental host or incidental host. Interesting. Already known for decades. The writing on this is not really that great, but the information here is good. I didn't know this, but it makes perfect sense. Less common flukes are becoming more common too, such as gastro, again with the names, which bring us cystic fibrosis. Cystic, that sounds like cysts. Fiber, that sounds like fibers, so like cyst fibers, so egg sacs that are in our body, I'm assuming. Down syndrome, no. That's not what causes Down syndrome. Brothers have done lessons on this. This, I'm going to say through the Spirit, is a result of unlawful marriages. And again, a marriage in the Bible is a sexual relationship between a man and a woman. So think through that, right? Lot and his sons, Moab and Ammon, I'm going to say through the Spirit, had what we now know today as Down syndrome. And polycystic kidney disease, 3 genetic diseases. So all of these problems that we don't want. Echinostoma, again, the parasite for all wheelchair cases. Another parasite name, which I'm not going to pronounce, one of our diabetes parasites, besides pancreatic fluke, have gained ground too. You may see any of these now while you are killing parasites with a vigorous program that induces a brief diarrhea. Okay, so when you're detoxing, it is not a brief diarrhea, depending on the method you use. It's not brief. It can last, I think I said before, if you're detoxing, like, prepared to go through years of detox. I'm trying to accomplish it in a much shorter period of time. I've been blessed to have the luxury to do that. It's not brief diarrhea even now. Like, it is, so far it's been months of it.